I will always believe that the best kind of partner anyone could have is one who believes in their dreams and is always ready to support each other in good and bad times. If your partner enjoys being with you when things are smooth but gives up on you, or leaves you when things get tough, then you should do yourself a favor and let them go. When my ex-girlfriend Beverly left me, I thought my world had ended, and I almost gave up on my dreams. But now I'm glad I didn't. I hope my story teaches you something new. My name is Jaden, 27. And my ex-girlfriend Beverly, 25. And I had been dating for 2 years before she broke up with me. I first met Beverly at a friend's birthday at a friend's birthday party. And from there, we just clicked with each other. The party was an all-night party. So the whole night, Beverly spent time with me. I can't say why, but I believed she chose to hang with me instead of the other guys that night because she suspected that I was spoiled with daddy's money, like the other rich kids that were there with us, but she was wrong. Beverly was a tall, light-skinned blonde girl, and from the first time our eyes met, I liked her instantly. She was in the midst of her friends when I walked into the club, and it was very difficult for anyone to not notice her. That night, she wore a short red dress with a double slit on her thigh level, and her well-waxed legs could not be ignored. She also had makeup on, and her long blonde hair fell beautifully on her back. She must have noticed my inability to take my eyes off her, so she came over to introduce herself to me after we played some games. The games we played that night were one of those silly adult games, and coincidentally, Beverly and I were paired in the same group. Everyone at the party could tell that she was the life of the party, and she had her own way of making the place fun and lively. The first time I saw Beverly, I knew there was something familiar about her, but I could not just place my fingers on it. It didn't take long before she came over to where I sat, introduced herself to me. I used the opportunity to ask her if we had met before, and she casually said that I must have seen her on TV or in a fashion magazine. When she mentioned it, I remembered seeing her on TV and on billboards for a particular designer's clothing brand. Beverly was a one-time model for a top-notch designer clothing company in the US, but I'll withhold their name. At that point, I connected the dots on why all of her girlfriends looked the same. They all looked pretty and slim, wore expensive clothes, and 80s of the people she sat with were models. Unfortunately, Beverly stopped modeling for the designer brand because of some silly posts she made on Instagram about the brand. As a result, they had to terminate their contract with her. And since then, she has found it difficult to get other modeling jobs. Her story was quite sad because she had barely been in the industry for a year, and she didn't think they would go as far as terminating their contract with her because of the post she made. Despite hearing all that, I still loved everything about her. And I'd even say it was love at first sight. I loved her energy, her smile, her aura, the way she spoke, and even how she carried herself around. She always acted classy, and she was the kind of girl who loved to have expensive jewelry, clothes, shoes, glasses, and the rest. Honestly, I also liked that she was famous and caused many heads to turn whenever we went out together. So after that night, Beverly and I began to hang out more because I believed she loved me too. I would take her shopping and we went to expensive restaurants or any place she wanted us to go, but we weren't dating yet. I just wanted her to see that I loved her and that I treated her like a queen if she accepted to be my girlfriend. As of the time we met, I owned a big logistics company with a lot of trucks, boats, and bikes. I inherited it from my dad, and I had been managing it for 6 years after his demise. All of this is to say that money was not a problem for me, and I was doing well on my own. After about 2 months of hanging out and going, I asked Beverly to be my girlfriend, and she said yes. A few weeks after she said yes, I asked her to move in with me, and she did. I lived in the house my dad left for me, and we were both very comfortable. Beverly could invite her friends over or throw parties as much as she wanted. The first 3 years of our relationship were beautiful throughout the 3 years Beverly did not work. Also, I did not have an issue with her not working because I could take care of us. And whenever she wanted something, she got it immediately. Most times, I didn't even wait for her to ask me for anything. On my own, I would stop at stores and shop for her favorite designer stuff. If a new phone was released, I would get it for her on the day of the release. And if a new designer bag or pair of glasses were released, I would get them for her too. Things continued like that for us. We went to parties, clubbed together, and even went on vacations together. I ensured that we went to all the countries Beverly always wanted to visit, and we even got certified in scuba diving together. Meanwhile, Beverly had always told me that she wanted to own her own online clothing store where she could buy already worn clothes from celebrities since she had access to some of them and sell them at a fair price, and I thought it was a great idea. Since I loved her, I supported her business idea with a huge amount of money, but she carelessly spent all of it on unnecessary things and ended up not starting the online clothing store. I didn't pressure her about the money because I believed people made mistakes and hopefully she would learn from her mistake. On the other hand, I had dreams of selling my logistics company and starting my own Champion Your Mushroom Farm business. In fact, it has been my childhood dream. And when a promising buyer came for my company, I sold it without thinking twice. After I sold my company, I made a lot of money from it, and I could purchase the things I needed for my farm. In the beginning, my mushroom farm business seemed like it was starting out well. But suddenly things got out of hand. And for the first year, I struggled a lot. I put a lot of money into the farm, but it didn't yield any results. Not just that. My spending habits, our travels and dates at expensive restaurants began to decrease. I no longer had the money to spend on unnecessary things, and each time Beverly talked about shopping or vacationing on a tropical island, it always resulted in a fight. During the first few months of my financial crisis, she acted like everything was cool, but when it got to a year, her complaints started to get louder. She began complaining about everything: the kind of food we ate, the adjustments we had to make for grocery shopping, and so much more. She literally complained about everything. I also tried to assure her everything would be fine once my business took off, but it fell on deaf ears. At some point, I had to make sacrifices because I believed I was responsible for the tough time she was going through. But no matter what I did, Beverly did not appreciate it. She wanted us to return to our former lifestyle or even something better, but I could not afford it at that time. When I got so choked financially, I was forced to sell my Mercedes S-Class to take care of the bills and other things that had to be taken care of at the farm. When Beverly found out, she was mad at me and we did not speak for a whole week. Of course, I didn't expect her to act that way because of the car, and it wasn't like I wasn't taking her on date nights or vacations anymore. We just did not go to the kind of restaurants where you'd easily find a celebrity. We just went to fancy restaurants that average people ate at. As for the vacations we complained about, we traveled to nearby states at least once every month and had fun. But Beverly still complained. She said the state trips were too weak for her and she wanted trips abroad. At some point, I stopped listening to her complaints and focused on the things I could do. That same year, I noticed Beverly's attitude toward me began to change. We no longer spent time with each other like we used to, and most times we'd be at home together and it would feel like we were strangers. She chose to hang out more with her friends and go to parties without me, and I know more of that had to do with me selling my car, but it didn't end there. Beverly began to sleep out and she'd return at odd hours of the morning with alcohol in her breath. If I asked where she was coming from, she'd become aggressive. When I could not take all of her nasty attitude anymore, I called her mother and reported everything she had done. Beverly's mother said there was nothing she could do because Beverly was a hard nut to crack, but she would try her best. When Beverly found out that I had spoken to her mother, she came back home that day and was so mad at me. I yelled back at her, but that didn't help. She stormed out of the house and returned after 2 days. During those 2 days, she refused to take my calls and did respond to my text messages. Meanwhile, she still made posts on Instagram, responded to her followers' comments and ignored my comments. When we eventually settled and she kept complaining about money, I simply suggested that she start her own online clothing store. Like she mentioned, and if she could not afford to buy clothes from celebrities, she could sell her already worn clothes. I said all of that because she had many followers on Instagram and Twitter, but instead of listening to me, she picked offense and started another fight. Honestly, I was sick and tired of her picking fights over unnecessary things. And this time, I called my mother to come over and help me talk to her. I really loved Beverly and saw a future with her, so I tolerated most of her madness. The day my mother came over, Beverly was at home, and I was expecting the discussion to go smoothly like the adults we were, but Beverly started an argument, and in the heat of the argument, she slapped my mom in my presence. She officially broke up with me, asked me to get a real life, and then walked out of our relationship. I was so mad and broken simultaneously, and I wanted to go after her. But my mother stopped me. I watched Beverly enter our room, pack her bags, and roll the box out of my house. I was speechless and she did not bother looking at our faces. After she left, my mother made me promise that I would never be with a girl like Beverly again. Months after Beverly left, I was devastated, but did not want to give up on my business. I had invested so much in it, and it did have the option of not working. So I'll confess that I stalked Beverly for a few months after we broke up. And that's how I knew she broke up with me to date a guy she met at the gym. It was hilarious because I knew him and met him at a few parties. He was one of those heavily built guys with massive followers on Instagram who flaunted their big muscles and good looks and posted photos of them in shorts. Simultaneously, within those difficult months of my life, I met Jennifer at one Dell Farmers seminar my friends had dragged me to. We talked after the meeting and we became friends. Jennifer was so different from Beverly and much more intelligent than her. At that time, Jennifer became the shoulder I could cry on. I shared all my business ideas, struggles, and everything I had gone through. Surprisingly, Jennifer promised to help me, and that's how we began to do everything together. She even came up with the idea of finding investors and clients for the mushroom whenever it was ready for harvest. Jennifer came up with all of the things neither Beverly nor I thought of. In the end, all of her ideas were fantastic. She was also a social media and marketing expert, and her expertise played a significant role in my success. It didn't take long before we started having investors, and in a couple of months, we became millionaires. Towards the end of the year, I stopped at the mall one day to get some groceries and parked in the parking lot. As I came out of my Porsche 911, I noticed that someone was staring at the car as I tried to park, and it was no other person than Beverly. She didn't even see it was me until I said hi to her, and the shock on her face was something I wished I could frame. After stuttering for the first few minutes, she asked how I got the car, and I explained how everything turned out. After she left, I told her about Jennifer and how she helped my business make millions. When she heard everything, she began apologizing for slapping my mother, but I told her all that was in the past. Finally, when she felt a little more comfortable, she asked if we could meet somewhere for coffee. But I told her it'd be unfair to Jennifer, and I walked out of her. She tried to speak, but I wasn't paying attention anymore, and I left her standing there. Later on, I noticed that she began to like all of my pictures and comment on them on Instagram, so I blocked her. I've not seen or heard from her since then, and I hope I don't stop. Most of you are not subscribed. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the video. Everything helps for the algorithm.